Guys, wow, looks like Kadyrov decided to take Wagner under his control, and on the other hand, Putin decided to sacrifice the most controversial general he has. And to make things even worse, as of right now, as the moment of recording this video, the total number of Russian losses in Ukraine since the beginning of war estimated at 300,000 people. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Whew. And so yes, today we're gonna talk about the mayor of one Russian small town called Sorsk, Vladimir Naidenov. And it looks like that he came up with an absolutely genius plan how to legally take money. So basically what he said, he urged his colleagues to give him 400% yearly, or I guess Christmas bonus, because he will be sending this money to the soldiers in the zone of the special military operation. And just once again he justified why he has to get 400% bonus. It is because of his impeccable work. But he said, don't worry guys, I'm not taking this money for myself. This will be for our soldiers. And you know what? He's a pretty smart weasel, because if they do not give him this bonus, they can be prosecuted as discrediting the Russian army. I mean, why would you not give money to our boys on the front lines? You should go straight to jail for this. And on the other hand, if this guy, he does end up getting the money, and then somehow mysteriously they disappear, he can always blame Ukrainians and the Western agents, once again protecting himself from all the consequences. Because, I mean, who's gonna argue with him, right? So it kinda does look like a win-win situation for him, so just let me know in the comments, what do you think? But okay, jokes aside, now let me give you a brief update from the south of Ukraine, and then where Putin decided to sacrifice one of the most controversial generals. Then we'll go to the east of the country, and we'll talk about Russians losing 300,000 people. Just to finalize everything with Kadyrov taking Wagner under his control. And so yes, first of all, we once again go to Crimea, to Sevastopol, where another vessel of the Russian Black Sea Navy, this so-called small anti-submarine boat, was spotted to be in extremely lot of smoke. The Russians immediately said that this was some kind of an exercise, but locals reported some pretty loud noises. You decide who you want to believe. But unfortunately, as we go to Kherson region, it was a very real attack of Russians against the city, and as a result, as you can see right here, they destroyed one of the local civilian storages. And speaking about Russian attacks, there is one good and one bad news. The good news is that the number of Russian missile attacks and drone attacks decreased relatively significantly recently, as you can see from this chart. But unfortunately, the bad news, and most likely this is true, is that the reason why Russians are not attacking Ukraine that much, it is because they are stockpiling missiles and drones for the winter to once again attack Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Just the very same thing they did the last year, and when they failed as well. But nevertheless, Ukrainians, they still continue their cross-Dnipro raids, and this time reportedly they were able to advance deeper and closer to Pyshanivka. At this very moment, heavy fighting and artillery attacks from both sides, they continue pretty much non-stop, but Ukrainians are not planning to leave the left side of Kherson region. They at this moment got a pretty confident foothold, and more reinforcements are expected to come in the near future. And so, since Russians, they kinda see that the attempts of Ukrainians to cross Dnipro are pretty intense and Russians can barely hold this advancement, it does feel like for them that they're kinda ready to give up some territories. So, what do you think the regime of Putin and the Russian military commandment decided to do? Probably some of you guessed it. That's right, they decided to find someone to blame. And And so let's talk about right now Putin deciding to sacrifice one of his most controversial general. But before we do this, if you guys do not mind and if you do like this style of daily updating, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel, because it helps my work a lot. You have no idea how much support it shows. Thank you guys so much. And recently, YouTube released a brand new feature which allows the channel members to get an early access to my videos. And if you're interested in seeing these daily updates way before they go live, you can go ahead and check my channel memberships. And so yes, back to this controversial general. So, the Russian commander who was responsible for Kherson defenses used to be Oleg Makarevich. And recently, the Ministry of Defense of Russia, most likely under the order by Putin, they appointed a new general, Mikhail Teplinsky, who used to be or still is pretty controversial for the Russian media and propagandists, because in the past he is the head of the Russian airborne troops. By the way, he was basically saying that in case there are no support from the Ministry of Defense of Russia, the Russian paratroopers will withdraw from their positions, kinda blackmailing and giving the ultimatum to the Ministry of Defense of Russia itself and even Putin. At that time, his career as a Russian military leader was already questionable, and it did feel like that the Ministry of Defense and Putin himself, they were kinda looking for the ways to get rid of him. But because he had a tremendous support from his subordinates, from his regular soldiers, paratroopers and airborne forces, the Ministry of Defense, they just could not get rid of him that easily in the public eye. They had to come up with some genius plan. And right now, whenever Russians started to lose in Kherson region, it looks like a perfect opportunity for them to do it right now. Because yes, Oleg Makarevich, we pretty much never heard about anything about him, and now they appoint Mikhail Teplinsky. So in this case, there will be potentially two outcomes. Outcome number one is that he will be somehow eliminated by Ukrainians during this counteroffensive, pretty much doing the work of the Ministry of Defense of Russia for them. And the outcome number two, in case he survives and Ukrainians still achieve the breakthrough and they do liberate a majority of Kherson region, or maybe even the entirety of it, Mikhail Teplinsky will be the one to take all the blame. Putin, Ministry of Defense of Russia, Shoigu, will be stripping him from the rank, taking away his medals, awards. He will be pretty much this one person for the Russian media to just blame for every single bad thing that happened for Russians in the south. And this just once again gives you a perfect idea how much Russian highest authorities they treat their own military. So it's pretty much no wonder why the morale of the Russian forces and even the commanders is so low, because yes, if you're winning, they will take all the credit, but if you are losing, you will be the one to be 100% blamed. But okay, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east of Ukraine, and that 300,000 Russians as we speak are already eliminated, and then we'll finalize everything with Kadyrov taking Wagner under his control. But first of all, let's make an extremely quick stop in Perm, as you can see, very far from the front lines. And as you can see from this video or picture, a local factory/storage which was producing gunpowder, some explosives and other military related materials and supplies spontaneously got caught on fire. Very interesting that a lot of military related objects in Russia end up in this situation, and yet this is just one more of them. And as you go to another territory, this time in Ukraine, which is claimed under Russian control, which is not, at least for now, it is temporarily occupied. But long story short, a local train depot with a lot of wagons full of fuel also were destroyed either by Ukrainians or Russian spies. The Russian media never acknowledges exactly what happened, but the fact is the fact, and right here they could not avoid the facts, saying that yes, it is being destroyed and the fuel is burning. Next we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Russians continue their offensive along Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line, and even somehow advanced somewhere, not yet confirmed by this map. And at the same time, Ukrainians are mainly attacking next to Bakhmut, and there are some minor gains. Going back to Kupiansk, Ukrainian artillery reportedly was able to destroy a relatively big firing position of Russians, which included multiple launch rocket system TOS-1A next to this front line, all the way to the east of Kupiansk. And as you go down to Klishivka, Ukrainians reportedly were able to advance a little bit to the north of this settlement and even claim some control to the rail tracks between Klishivka and Bakhmut. Going even more down to Kurdyumivka, Ukrainians also reportedly were relatively successful to the northeast of this settlement. And as we go to the most intense combat zone, Avdiivka, Russians this time were able to severely damage a Ukrainian Leopard 2 tank located in Krasnohorivka. They even showed us this video, which yes, does show that there is some kind of fire under the tank, but most likely, according to the military experts, this is just the fuel burning. You do not see that much impact inside the tank, or you do not see its armor being actually severely damaged. Most likely this is once again just the fuel burning, and in case this is true, Ukrainians will be able to tow this away, repair it and bring it back to the front lines. But Ukrainians themselves, they did have a response, and they were able to destroy 2 Russian tanks and 1 armored vehicle next to Vodyane. And in addition to that, Russians continue to clear the mines around Avdiivka using meteorite mine clearing armored vehicle, and Ukrainians destroyed it as well. And we even have this pretty interesting video from one of the very first days of Avdiivka Russian offensive on October 10th, which shows a lot of Russian military vehicles advancing closer to this city, just for this entire convoy to be ambushed and destroyed by Ukrainians. Since the very first days, Russian offensive did not go as planned. And speaking about the losses and nothing for Russia going according to the plan, as of the moment of recording this video, since the beginning of the war, Russians already lost estimatedly more than 300,000 people. And this is the losses that Putin thought will be just a 3-day war when they'll be able to capture Kiev with little to none resistance. And just for comparison reasons, in one of Chechen wars, which also lasted almost 2 years, Russia lost only 6,000 people. And in the entire Afghanistan war, which lasted almost 10 years for the Russian Soviet army, the losses of Russians, even though this lasted 5 times longer, the losses are 20 times fewer. Yes. Russian Soviet army was fighting almost for 10 years, losing approximately 15,000 reportedly people, and now in under 2 years they lost already 300,000. Putin's invasion into Ukraine is no longer just a special military operation. It is no longer according to the plan as he, Shoigu, or anyone else in the Russian Ministry of Defense or highest authorities are talking about during their Russian propaganda segments. And what is even more, it is clearly not a liberating war, because you simply cannot go to another country, invade it, fight against its civilians, and call this a liberating war because you want to free Ukrainians from Ukrainians. Because I mean, just take a look at the pictures from Avdiivka. The city is completely destroyed almost to the ground. It used to be a regular functioning, just a regular city settlement with civilians, residents, kids going to school, people going to work, and then Russians decided to liberate them. And this is how it looks right now. Clearly, it is not liberated, according at least to my standards. And during this war, many Russian formations attempted to breach the defenses of Ukrainians and liberate them once again from Ukrainians, including such as, for example, Wagner, Kadyrov and Chechens, just the regular conventional Russian army, contract soldiers, volunteers, and most probably not the ones who went to Ukraine according to their own will, but the ones who were forced there, mainly during this partial mobilization last year in September. And speaking about Wagner and Kadyrov Chechens, according to President of Chechnya Ramzan Kadyrov, at least 170 ex-Wagner soldiers, they decided to voluntarily join the ranks of Akhmat Battalion, pretty much the personal army of Ramzan Kadyrov. I seriously doubt the word he used here, voluntarily, but this is what he claims. But according to the commander of Akhmat Battalion, Abti Alauddinov, he is saying that Rosgvardia is recruiting Wagner into Akhmat Battalion. I do not know why they need to complicate the process so much. Rosgvardia, Wagner, Akhmat Battalion, going like this and that. But this is what he said, and this makes a little bit more sense than what Kadyrov says. Because Rosgvardia is already recruiting Wagner, not just accepting volunteers. And I mean, you probably already know how recruitment, so-called recruitment in Russia works. It basically either you do it, you go there, you join Akhmat Battalion, or you will be prosecuted, or maybe in some ways even eliminated. And according to the same Alauddinov, not 170 Wagner soldiers, but quote-unquote massive number of Wagner soldiers decided to join the ranks of Akhmat Battalion, and most of them they just follow their Wagner commanders. So it's like one general, one lieutenant, one captain joins Akhmat, and then a lot of his subordinates decided to just voluntarily follow him. And what is even the most suspicious is that according to the same Alauddinov, a lot of, or pretty much every single Wagner soldiers spoke respectfully about Kadyrov Chechens and Akhmat Battalion in particular. But if you remember, in the past, when Wagner was under control of Yevgeny Prigozhin, it was one of the biggest feuds against Wagner soldiers, Kadyrov soldiers, Wagner soldiers, Ministry of Defense, and suddenly when Prigozhin is no longer with us, Wagners are so peaceful, so friendly, so accepting of our other military formations, including under the direct control by the Russian authorities. All of this is extremely suspicious, and I do not think it's true. So it looks like we will see soon enough whether they decide to recruit them from Akhmat Battalion, and then they will end up in the hottest combat zones in Ukraine, with the hopes that they will be eliminated, because if you remember, Putin does not forgive traitors. Or this is some kind of a power move to show the total submission of Wagner after the elimination of its leader. And I guess we will see the truth soon enough, so if you don't want to miss it, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. And also, if you want to see fully uncensored episode of The Russian Dude, please go ahead and check my Patreon. The support for my work starts only as little as $4 per month, and there is 1 week of free access for you to see if you like it or not. The link is down below. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.